I know we have. Well, welcome everybody to a balmy Michigan January. We are so grateful that you are spending this time with us, the Michigan Democratic Jewish Caucus. I'm its chair, Jessica Decky Alexander, and it is an honor to be able to have this candidate forum. This is the second of two candidate forums we've hosted back to back. Last week we hosted the Attorney General. We had around 100 people attending that particular one. Really robust discussion and a real opportunity to provide an accessible platform for not just our members, but our friends as well. So we're grateful for the ability to do that and for you to come. Just a couple things. People always say, "Why are we doing this forum?" Well, there's two reasons. There's like a more global reason. Um, why are we hosting this? As a caucus, as a Jewish caucus. So our Jewish, I guess I would say, maybe story is, and I don't malign this, but it's one of exclusion, persecution. There was quota systems. And that's a lot of that has really deeply shaped how our attitudes towards government and power. And so we know that voting is really a primary safeguard of tyranny. And democratic participation is often seen as something that should never be taken for granted. And I know you know this, most people, but we don't fare well with monarchies and authoritarians. So one of the reasons we do this is because it's really aligned with our values to provide and make sure that we are lifting up democracy and perpetuating it at any cost. And the second one is really more is technical, but for those of you, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State and our state school and our state educational boards as well, they are in regions, they are not elected in a primary, they are elected by convention and an endorsement convention, and that is April 19th. So we think it's really important as members of the Michigan Democratic Party to make sure we provide this to both our caucus members and members alike. At the end of our session today, we'll provide you an opportunity so you can register to be an MDP member, so you can go to the convention on April 19 and vote for your AG candidates, your SOS candidates, and your educational candidates. And we'll also send that information out to you as well. Last thing is the chat is disabled for a while because when we are ready for questions, and then we will re-enable it, if that's even a word, and you can then chat with hosts, including the amazing Adam Duberstein, who is our outreach co-chair, and he will be actually curating our questions. And now our moderator. Similar to last week with our AG forum, we wanted to make sure that we had a moderator that is both reflective of our caucus. He's part of our Jewish Democratic community, but also has the expertise. So last week had attorney Joan Lowenstein. She was our moderator. And this week we have the amazing Rena Basch, who is both the director of elections for Washtenaw County, was also an elected clerk, and is a member of the MDP and our caucus. So I'm going to pass the show over to her. She will guide us through our questions, and that's it. All right, Rena, love that you're here. Thanks so much.
Oh, thank you, Decky. And thank you again for the opportunity to participate in this forum. As I'm very interested in seeing us continue to have a successful and effective Democratic Secretary of State in Michigan. As you mentioned, I have served as the elected clerk in Ann Arbor Charter Township, and that was for over 21 years. And since July of 2024, I've been the director of elections for Washtenaw County. So, for more than 2 decades, I've been doing elections administration and interacting with the Bureau of Elections and the Secretary of State. Now, I imagine most of us here like me, are primarily concerned with voting rights and elections. But I'd like to remind us all that the Secretary of State in Michigan, that role includes other responsibilities. And here's what Google's AI tool Gemini had to say about the Secretary of State role. The Michigan Secretary of State manages driver and vehicle services, oversees elections, and handles business document services, acting as Michigan's chief election officer, motor vehicle administrator, and registrar for documents, ensuring government transparency and public access to services. Pretty good, huh? Sometimes AI helps us out. And I also agreed with the way AI summarized the key responsibilities for the Secretary of State. And those key responsibilities are motor vehicle services, elections administration, business and document services, voter engagement, and transparency and customer service. So, again, it's a lot more than just voting. But in essence, the office serves as a vital link between Michigan residents and the state government for essential needs such as driving, voting, business licensing, vital records. The Secretary of State also promotes broader democracy and democratic processes. So I just wanted to remind us all that there's more to it than just conducting elections. So at this time in the program, members of the caucus will introduce each of the four candidates that we have with us tonight. So I believe Debbie is going to do the first introduction.
That's right. My name is Debbie Rosenman, and I am a member of the caucus and have been for many years. I am happy to introduce Barb Byrum. Barb Byrum is a lifelong Michigander and a nationally respected election administrator who currently serves as the Ingham County Clerk, a role in which she has overseen dozens of local, state, and federal elections and managed all aspects of election administration for one of Michigan's most complex and diverse counties. With deep experience running elections on the ground, Byron brings a practitioner's perspective to the race for Michigan's Secretary of State, one shaped not by theory, but by years of hands-on responsibility for voter access, ballot security, and public trust. Before becoming county clerk, Byrum served in the Michigan House of Representatives, where she represented Ingham County and built a legislative record focused on transparency, consumer protection, and responsive government. Her time in the legislature gave her a strong understanding of how election law is written, debated, and implemented, as well as how state-level policy decisions affect local officials and voters alike. As Ingham County Clerk, Byrum has been responsible not only for elections, but also for vital records, budgeting, staffing, and consumer service. She has overseen elections during periods of extraordinary challenges, including the rapid expansion of absentee voting, the implementation of new election laws, and the heightened scrutiny of election systems. Throughout these changes, she has emphasized accuracy, transparency, and clear communication with voters, poll workers, and the public. Her office has worked to ensure that elections are secure while remaining accessible to first-time voters, seniors, voters with disabilities, and communities that have historically faced barriers to participation. Byrum has highlighted the importance of efficient systems, respectful customer service, and treating residents not as numbers, but as people. In her candidacy for Secretary of State, Byrum has emphasized the importance of protecting voting rights, strengthening election infrastructure, and ensuring that the department continues to function as both a guardian of democracy and a high-performing public service agency. Her campaign reflects a belief that secure elections and accessible elections are not opposing goals, but complementary ones, and that public confidence is built through competence, integrity, and transparency. Barb Byrum brings to the race a steady record of public service, a deep familiarity with Michigan election law and administration, and a clear understanding of the responsibilities entrusted to the Secretary of State's office.
Okay, next we have Adam Duberstein, and he will introduce Garlin Gilchrist.
Thank you, Rena. Garlin Gilchrist is a husband, dad, a public servant, and an engineer dedicated to making government work for regular people. Working alongside Governor Whitmer, Garlin has a proven track record of leading and delivering for Michigan. He played a leading role in delivering free pre-K for all, increasing small business success, and diversifying the state economy, protecting abortion access, bringing more high-quality jobs to Michigan, reforming our justice system to create opportunity and keep communities safe, and connecting tens and thousands of Michiganders to reliable, affordable, and fast internet. As the country's only elected statewide software engineer, Garlin is focused on making the government actually work for the people. He believes it's time for bold, fearless leadership to stand against the threats to democracy in the face of a president who acts like a king. If our democratic system doesn't work, we lose the most important tool we really have to solve the problems every Michigander faces, from unaffordable childcare, housing, and healthcare. Garland is running for secretary because Michigan is ground zero in the battle for free and fair elections. As a software developer himself, he knows how to stand tall to big tech companies that try to abuse Michiganders' personal information and modernize systems for licensing and registration to work better and smarter. Growing up in Metro Detroit, Garland knows what it feels like to be part of communities across Michigan, the Midwest, and the country that feel that their voice gets lost in the system. As the City of Detroit's Director of Innovation, he created the Improved Detroit smartphone app to amplify residents' voices on local issues and ensure the city addresses issues like running water, potholes, damaged street signs, and other issues. Prior to serving as lieutenant governor, Garland narrowly lost his insurgent campaign for Detroit city clerk and worked at Microsoft as a software engineer that helped build SharePoint into the fastest growing product in the company's history. Garland is the highest ranking black elected official in Michigan history. He lives in Detroit with his wife Ellen, where they are raising their twins, Emily and Garland III, and their daughter Ruby.
Okay. Take it away, David. Please
Hey,
introduce Adam.
thank you so much. I'm David Lauer. I'm the chair of membership for the caucus. Adam Hollier is a public servant, veteran, and recent Michigan state senator whose career has been shaped by commitment to service, equity, and effective government. A lifelong Detroiter, Hollier brings to his candidacy for Michigan Secretary of State a combination of legislative experience, executive leadership, and community-based public service, along with a strong understanding of how state government decisions affect people's daily lives. Hollier served in the Michigan Senate, representing Detroit, where he worked on issues ranging from transportation and infrastructure to veteran services and economic opportunity. During his time in the legislature, he built a reputation as a collaborative lawmaker focused on practical solutions and constituent service. His legislative experience provided him with a working knowledge of election law, state administration, and the interplay between state agencies and local governments. In addition to his legislative service, Hollier has held executive roles in state government, including serving as director of the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. In that capacity, he was responsible for overseeing statewide programs, managing budgets and staff, and coordinating services for Michigan's veteran community. That role required navigating large bureaucratic systems while remaining responsive to individuals seeking help. Hollier is also a U.S. Army Reserve officer. He was frequently spoken about service as a responsibility rather than a title, and about the importance of institutions functioning reliably and fairly for everyone who depends on them. Throughout his career, Hollier has emphasized voter access, civic participation, and the importance of strong democratic institutions. He has supported efforts to protect voting rights, modernize election systems, and ensure that citizens can engage with government without unnecessary barriers. At the same time, he's underscored the need for professionalism and integrity in public administration, recognizing that public confidence depends on both access and competence. I'm happy to introduce Adam Hollier.
Thank you, David. And last but not least, we will have our caucus member, Jean, introduce Suzanna.
Thank you. I'm Gene Farber, treasurer of the caucus. Suzanna Shkreli is a first-generation American of Albanian heritage. Her parents came to the United States as children to escape authoritarianism and build a better life here in Michigan. Growing up, Suzanna learned the value of hard work and good customer service from her parents. She worked in the family restaurant alongside her three siblings, stocking shelves and serving customers. Carrying that work ethic into everything she did, Suzanna played competitive ice hockey from the age of 5 through high school. After graduating law school, Suzanna joined the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office for nearly 8 years and spent half her tenure in the Child Protection Unit, securing convictions against child predators, abusers, and murderers. In 2019, she was appointed Deputy Legal Counsel by Governor Whitmer, and in this role coordinated with the Secretary of State's office to ensure the safe and lawful meeting of Michigan's electors in the contested election of 2020. She has since served in a variety of roles for the state as Michigan's child advocate, director of juvenile justice reform, and in 2024, she became commissioner of the Michigan State Lottery. Suzanna is running to be Michigan Secretary of State to defend our democracy. She will champion implementing a new digital driver's license, work for faster election results, and bring walk-in hours for seniors, bringing the same dedication to customer service she learned in her parents' restaurant to make government more efficient and working people's lives more convenient. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That was, I appreciate hearing everyone's stories and their background. And now we're going to move forward to start hearing directly from our candidates. So before we get to the questions that were submitted by the caucus, we'd first like to invite each candidate to spend up to 2 minutes sharing their key platform and philosophy. So we're going to go in alphabetical order for this piece of it, and we'll start with Barb Byrum.
I think we need to unmute Barb there.
Got it, Laura?
Thank you very much for unmuting me. So thank you, Michigan Jewish Dem Caucus, for the opportunity to participate today. So the top legislative or executive priorities that I am seeking is to continue modernizing the branch office process to improve on the existing customer experience. I believe Secretary of State Benson has made amazing advancements when it comes to secretary services going into those branch offices. Now there are kiosks at some grocery stores and some online processes that people can do, but the online system is still clunky, and the kiosks are not accessible to all people. Those kiosks are located typically at Meijer and Kroger, and not all communities have a Meijer or Kroger anywhere near them. In fact, more than 45 minutes drive. So we need to expand access to those kiosks and really look at that website and the usability of the website. And speaking of usability of the website, the My Mitten, the campaign finance portal needs improvement. Quite frankly, it's a step in the right direction, but it needs improvement. As county clerk, I started a new campaign finance disclosure system, and we did a soft release, and we took feedback from users, and I think that's what is desperately needed when it comes to the website. I would continue to administer safe, secure, fair, and accessible elections. We have some of the safest and most secure elections in the United States, and we will continue to do that. And I would also hold government accountable and government officials accountable with transparency and providing the system to be more transparent. I saw my cue. I'm sorry, Doctor.
It's totally okay, Barb. You still have about 10 seconds. And please call me Adam.
Okay, Adam.
It's good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right. Thank you, Barb. Next up for sharing their key platform and philosophy will be Garlin Gilchrist.
Thank you so much for having me today, everyone. I do want to start by acknowledging that, look, this is the first time that I've been able to visit with the caucus since the summer Simca, and also the comments that I made about the Netanyahu government this past fall. I appreciate the individual conversations that I've had with some of you, including meeting with the ADL and the AJC. And I heard you loud and clear that the nature of some of my comments and campaign rhetoric has been taken as anti-Semitic. I want to apologize for that. I also want to apologize for the hurt that I caused. This was never my intention or the intention of my campaign. I believe and I firmly stand against anti-Semitism, and I vow to continue an open dialogue with this community. I also believe in my heart that there is a place in the Democratic Party for the entire spectrum of the Jewish people and Jewish community. and I'll make sure that that door remains wide open to them. I think all of us agree that there is so much more work to be done to ensure that all Jewish Michiganders feel safe and seen, and that their rights are respected and protected all across the state. And I promise to be an ally and a leader in that fight. I want to make the Michigan Secretary of State's office more efficient and more effective at solving people's problems, just in the same way that I've done for my entire career. When I worked for the city of Detroit, I built apps that let residents report issues from their phones, cut response times in half, and overall open new services to more people in more parts of the city. As Lieutenant Governor, I made systems work that people thought were impossible to fix or create in the first place, like delivering automatic criminal record expungement that's cleared the records for more than 400,000 Michiganders, worked to restore driver's licenses to people who had lost them and help people get out of jail as a result of that. And it gave people real second chances at jobs and housing and helping them fully return and integrate back into civic and economic life. But y'all, now more than ever, we need that kind of problem-solving approach and energy at the Secretary of State's office to be efficient, to be responsive, and to be a 21st century office that's going to protect and strengthen the democratic process from the dangers and threats, both rhetorically, legally, and physically, of the Trump administration. I'm going to protect your personal data and information from the big tech companies that are hungry to mine it and the Trump administration that is thirsty to surveil it. And I'm going to help make sure that the professionals continue to deliver excellent service. Because whether you're renewing a license, registering to vote, these everyday interactions with government have to be hassle-free.
Thank you, Garlin. Next, let's hear from Adam Hollier.
Hey, one, Adam Ollier, super hard. Looks like Hollier, sounds like Ollier, but I'll be the only Adam there. As we talk about Secretary of State, it's a space where you interact with government in the most personal way. We've got to do more to make it accessible in a real and meaningful way, especially at a time where we live in a country where people can ask you for your papers. We have to make sure, one, that every single Michigander has a valid ID, something I worked on really hard as a state legislature, ensuring that folks who were coming out of incarceration had an ID at a time where routinely they would come out of prison with just their prison documents. And that was not enough to get a Michigan ID, which is crazy. But we launched a pilot program with the Secretary of State and the Department of Corrections back then. And now that program has been rolled out to the county. It's really important. We have got to get it done. And I'm really committed to making sure that every Michigander has a valid ID. Next, we've got to build a campaign finance system that works, right? The one that we have does not answer the questions that people want to know. It does not provide us with the information that we see. When every day we would all like to see less money in government, the first step is transparency and accountability. Because if you can look up someone's record and say, oh, they got money from X group, or they got money in this way, or they're spending it this way, then you can start to make your decisions based on that. Something I think a lot of Michiganders want to do. At a time where redistricting has become the issue, it's really important that the next Secretary of State prioritize how the redistricting process works. The last cycle, we had a Democratic trifecta for the first time in my lifetime, and that was made possible by the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. But because they messed up the city of Detroit so profoundly, we had to redraw those lines due to a court case. The next Secretary of State is going to have to do training and education and marketing across the state to encourage folks like you who passed petitions and did all that work to make sure that the next system works in a way that it didn't last time, and that we built enduring representative districts, because so many of our elections are determined by primaries, not where we are fighting over ideas or things like that, but by how the lines were drawn every 10 years. The Secretary of State, by getting every single person in the state an ID, can play a huge role in laying the foundation for a strong census count.
We're at time.
That we draw the lines well.
All right, thank you, Adam. And next up, we have Suzanna Shkreli. Did I get your name right?
Close enough.
Okay, please correct me.
Suzanna Shkreli, but I'm used to it, so no worries. But first and foremost, thank you everybody for inviting me to speak with you tonight. My name is Suzanna Shkreli. You can call me Susie. I am born and raised in Michigan and have spent my career serving Michiganders. Jewish Americans have been at the forefront of so many of our country's liberal movements, from fighting for freedom, such as voting rights, civil rights, and reproductive rights. It's not lost on me that many in the Jewish community now feel politically homeless, as the alarming rise in anti-Semitism has many Jewish Americans feeling abandoned and alone. But you are not alone. I am Albanian American, and my parents came to this country as children to escape authoritarianism and to find the American dream. Like Jewish Americans, we're committed to our faith, families, communities, and sharing our traditions. It's unthinkable and unforgivable that the same dangers that my family fled from in their native country have taken root right here at home. From my work securing convictions against child predators and murderers as an assistant prosecutor in Macomb County to serving in Governor Whitmer's office as deputy legal counsel, child advocate, director of juvenile justice reform, and as the Michigan Lottery commissioner, I have the track record and toughness to make this office and ensure that it stays in Democratic hands and to take on anyone who tries to mess with our elections. As deputy legal counsel for the governor, I was at the 2020 meeting of electors, worked hand in hand with MSP and the Secretary of State's office to ensure that we were prepared for what was coming our way. And because of our emergency preparation and coordination with MSP and the Secretary of State's office, we were able to thwart the fake electors' attempts to enter the building and deliver on the governor's constitutional obligation. And we can expect even worse in 2026 and 2028. This office calls for a time with somebody with my track record as a prosecutor and with my experience in emergency management to defend our Constitution and our vote. But I also know that this job is more than just that. It's about making the lives of Michiganders easier. And so from working in my parents' restaurant as a kid, I learned good customer service early on, and I've taken those lessons to heart in every position I've held. And I want to make Michiganders' life easier, from implementing a digital driver's license to working for faster election results and to expanding walk-in hours and to expand upon the mobility units that we can find on campuses in rural Michigan as well as in urban areas. I look forward to earning your trust and support, and thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you to everyone for sharing. And now we're going to move into the question portion of our forum. So we will share 3 or maybe 4, if we have time, curated questions. These questions were crafted with input through our caucus leadership and through the members. We will put those questions in the chat as they get asked so that everyone can see them and refer back to them. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to answer each question. And if time permits, we will take questions via the chat from attendees on Zoom. And Adam will be the curator of those questions, maybe trying to consolidate them. Again, to ensure fairness, we're going to rotate now that we're getting into the questions. And so we'll start again with Barb, but then in the next questions, we'll shift down. So here we go. The first question is, could you please describe how your political and professional experiences prepare you to be an effective and successful Secretary of State? So again, we get to start with Barb. If she gets unmuted.
Yeah, sorry, so sorry. So thank you. So again, I'm Barb Byrum. I have been fortunate enough to serve as the Ingham County Clerk for the past 13 years. In that capacity, I have conducted 42 elections, numerous recounts. I was one of the few counties to complete the 2016 recount before the court stopped it after a few days. I'm the only candidate that is a state certified election administrator, have been for 13 years. I'm the only candidate that's a nationally certified election official, have been for 9 years. I serve on national committees with other election officials around the United States. My current one is OVI, Overseas Voting Initiative. We look at the challenges our military and overseas voters have when exercising their right to vote. I served on the Election Security Committee under Secretary of State Benson, and I implemented the new election equipment back in 2016, which is pertinent now because we are looking at new election equipment within the next few years. There's an RFP out now for new election equipment again. So I have that experience bringing in new election equipment. I also have the experience of implementing changes to election law. You know, we have seen some amazing advancements when it comes to access to the ballot box, whether it was legislative or constitutionally brought. And I have had the opportunity to implement all of those over my 13 years as county clerk. I served 3 terms in the Michigan House of Representatives. 2, we were in the majority. My last one, we were in the minority. That House district that I represented was not a Democratic majority district. It was a competitive district. I'm the only candidate before you today that has made it through a competitive election. I run tough elections and I win tough elections. Also, I am a business owner. I was raised in a small business, but I owned and operated a retail hardware store for nearly 20 years. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to customer service and meeting customers where they are and making sure that they are afforded the services that they desire. I've been pushing back against election myths and disinformation for many years. During the 2020 election, Donald Trump claimed the election was rigged before even a single vote was cast. I was pushing back then, informing people of how elections really are being run in the United States and specifically in Michigan. I know our elections are safe and secure, and I've been holding people to account when they have attacked the integrity of our elections, not just today when I'm running for Secretary of State, but for the past 13 years. Thank you, Adam.
All right, go ahead, Garlin.
Thank you so much. I think that the Office of Secretary of State is one that is grounded in making sure that people can experience a wide open door to access their government, whether that's through the voting process or through coming into the branch offices that are in every county and mobile communities in every county. We need a Secretary of State who can make sure that those are excellent experiences that are welcoming and accessible and that more people can join. But that's what I've done for my entire career is make systems work for people, especially those systems that people have experienced not working. I alluded to my work to reform our automatic criminal record extension program in Michigan, one that didn't work for people. Only 7 out of 100 people ever used it to get anything cleared off of their record. I was told that it was impossible to fix that system, that it was too expensive, that it would cost too much money. I was told that even by my own administration colleagues. But I believe that you can make something work for people so that they can get the justice they deserve. And I worked with our team, both inside of government, stakeholders outside of government, to make sure that system could work for people and be automated so you could just get the justice that the law that you required. And after a 2-year implementation, now more than 2 million records, 2 million offenses have been cleared from people's records, and 400,000 people now can fully participate in civic and economic life. I was told that wasn't possible. But that's what I do is make things work that may be difficult, but we know are important. In my career, I've also done something that the next Secretary of State needs to focus on, and that is deeply engage Michiganders to let them know what their power is. I left the private sector to become a community organizer so that people could understand, help them understand the power that they have to change their community for the better, and open them up to the fact that voting must be part of that process. I'll help us make sure that the Secretary of State's office delivers an election experience for Michiganders where we can look back on it at the end and not be proud of mediocre voter turnout, but instead be proud of voter turnout that's going in the right direction. I work to help make that happen. And then finally, one of the big challenges that's facing not just the systems that the Secretary of State's office is responsible for, but systems, frankly, across many, many parts of our life. And that is the fact that this department has more personal data information than any other department in state government. And there is a deep thirst for that data and information. The Trump administration has been suing state after state after state to try to get access to that information so they could use it to attack people, to weaponize it against communities, against minorities, to make them less safe, to feed it to ICE so they can go in and with Gestapo tactics and threaten and kill people, as we've seen in other parts of this country. I'm deeply concerned about that. But I also am concerned about what the tech companies want to do with this information, to feed it into an AI model without your permission, to run it through a data center that we don't want to see here in the state of Michigan. Well, I have heard those conversations. That's part of why I left the industry, because I wasn't inspired. I, in fact, was pissed off about what they were saying, about what they wanted to do for people or against people or to people. I'll be the Secretary of State who can stand up against that most forcefully, because when I sit across the table for many of these companies, they won't be able to BS me. They won't be able to lie to me. They won't be able to sell me a bill of goods or talk about something that's rosy about what they could do if they only had access to all this stuff. I'll make sure to protect your privacy and your data and information so that the state of Michigan will be the place where you know you'll be protected, your data will be safe and secure,
Very
and you
time.
best self.
Thanks, Garland. Next up is Adam. Describe how your political and professional experiences prepare you to be an effective and successful Secretary of State.
So I'm a captain in the Army. I'm a civil affairs officer and a paratrooper. I jump out of perfectly good airplanes and ran into burning buildings as a volunteer firefighter. I have always opted into an opportunity to serve where the stuff is happening the most. And as everyone here recognizes, Secretary of State is a space where that's where the fight is. That's where Republicans are coming after the opportunities for us to vote. I have a 5-year-old son. AJ was born the day before President Biden got elected. I got called from the hospital down to the TCF Center because Republicans were banging on the glass and saying stop the count. I represented the state Senate and the legislature as we fought back against Republicans' impact there. And on the January 6th work, we know that the next Secretary of State is going to have to fight a different fight, very different than the last thing. It's going to be about IDs and making sure that people have them when they go out to vote. It's going to be about the lines that we see drawn. It is going to be very different. And as a state legislator, as a state senator, as someone who has run a state agency, I think I have a unique set of experiences that allow us to actually go from the implementation of our ideas to getting the legislative processes necessary to get done. Because ultimately, most of the good ideas that we all have to get legislative changes. So when we start talking about how we're going to get more days to process absentee ballots, something I worked on, or additional funding so that local clerks have the resources they need to be successful. So much of that comes down to the relationship you have with state legislators, something that I have and shown an ability and a willingness to do. As a matter of fact, I got a very conservative Republican state senator come down to the city of Detroit, spend a day with me with LGBTQ youth of color. And we left that experience with $1 million for permanent supported housing for trans women of color. If we can get resources to do that, we can absolutely get the funding that we need to ensure that people aren't tired on election day because there are enough people working to make sure that our ballots are counted and processed effectively. Because too often our systems rely on process instead of people, and people get messed up. I mean, the city of Hamtramck, for example, had an election that's determined by 11 votes with 37 votes not counted. We have got to do more to make sure that human error is not the reason that your vote isn't counted, that the postal service being late isn't the reason that a soldier who is deployed overseas ballot isn't counted. There are a number of things that other states are doing that Michigan can do if we can get that legislation through. And I'm committed to doing that work around voter IDs and participation, particularly voter participation. We're very proud that 3 out of every 4 Michiganders voted in the last presidential election, but 1 in 4 Detroiters voted in the last mayoral election. And we've seen similar voting records across our local municipal elections. We've got to fix it. And only the Secretary of State can do that work.
Thank you. All right, next up, Susie.
All right. Well, I'll start by saying that my vast background has really given me the incredible tools to be an effective Secretary of State. From my years as a prosecutor, I have the toughness and track record to take on forces that threaten our democratic institutions. I've met with the worst kind of threats in the courtroom, and I'm ready to take on those threats again in the courtroom as Secretary of State, as well as in the court of public opinion. During my time in state government, I've taken on big roles and ran a big office. As the commissioner of the state lottery, I oversaw 8 regional offices with a staff of over 200 people with a $5 billion budget, and that's akin to the Secretary of State's office. I also describe being in the governor's executive office as the neck of government. I learned quickly about administrative efficiency and getting to yes, and how to effectively utilize state resources and work with issue experts. As lottery commissioner, I managed the big office, that big office with a big budget, and I had 8 regional offices across the state. State government also provided me with the experience and emergency preparedness from the meeting of the electors in 2020 to the polar vortex to COVID. This is the posture that we're going to need to stand up to attacks on our elections in 2028. Emergency preparation means everything from coaching clerks through tabletop exercises prior to the election to gaining an understanding of every county's the state emergency operation functionality as well as the local operation functionality, and how the Secretary of State's office can respond to those emergencies effectively in collaboration with those clerks. We also need to ensure that counties across the state, whether they're currently considered well-resourced or not, have the mechanisms they need to stand up to those attacks on elections. And I have strong relationships, and I'm building strong relationships with clerks at every level to make sure they have what they need. And finally, growing up in my parents' restaurant means customer service is in my DNA. Even to this day, when I'm at my parents' restaurant, if I notice somebody waiting, I got to get up and get them a cup of coffee and a menu. I believe in first come, first serve and friendly service with a smile, and I know I'll bring that to the Secretary of State's office. And from the political lens of this question, in 2016, I ran a congressional race in Michigan's 8th congressional district against Mike Bishop after Melissa Gilbert dropped out. We turned that race in a very few short months from red to blue. I was endorsed by Obama, and we outperformed Democrats at the top of the ticket. We need someone who's going to win the general election. In my campaign, in the few short weeks that we launched from 12/8 to 12/31, we raised over $300,000, and not one red penny has been from a corporate PAC. We're going to need somebody who knows how to fight, but also knows how to fight strong. And that's not on Twitter, and that's not using buzzwords, but that's having the litigation experience to understand where our strengths are and how to fight. And I believe that's me. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I must interrupt you all before asking the next question to say how impressed I am and how lucky the Democratic Party is to have candidates with all your political and professional experiences. So it's really enlightening to hear from you all. So now we're going to move on to the next question. This last week, the U.S. Supreme Court held that anyone who runs for election has standing to challenge the voting process. How do you see this change affect Michigan elections, and what is your plan to minimize the impact of these highly likely lawsuits? So for this question, Decky is copying it into the chat, and we're going to start with Garlin.
Yeah, thank you. This iteration of the Supreme Court has made abundantly clear that they are very focused on harming the individual rights and freedoms of Michiganders. They have been particularly hostile to voters, to voting rights. Not only am I concerned about this particular decision, but I'm concerned about the pending decision that'll be coming out from the Louisiana case against the Voting Rights Act. That could be one of the final stakes in the heart of this legislation that has protected for 2 full generations the voting rights of Americans from all walks of life. So I think it's just like another piece of the puzzle, the way that we're seeing the creative destruction of our democracy by one branch of government at the federal level. Well, at the state level, we have the ability to be a bulwark. I think one of the most aggressive and important functions that we will need to do from the Secretary of State's office is to have one of the most robust legal teams to challenge this administration in court and for the actions they'll try to take, to be active participants through briefings, through briefs and other channels. In any case, in federal court, in state court, in circuit court, in court of claims, all the way up to the state Supreme Court and to the federal Supreme Court, to make sure that we can protect people's access to the voting process. Michigan elections are under the purview of the Secretary of State and our local election administrators. We have to make sure that folks are empowered, are equipped to be able to do the work that they need to do so Michiganders can have their voice heard and felt, to not be intimidated out of that opportunity. And that's something that I'll stand tall to do. This is very disturbing what's happened. We have work to do to make sure that we can protect against it and mitigate its impact, but we also have to look around the corner for the things that are going to be coming down the pipe even further. And I'll stand tall for that.
Thank you. Adam?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I think we're all deeply concerned with what the Supreme Court is doing. But we should also remember that so much of what the Supreme Court does is push things back to the state level, which is why it's critically important to have a Secretary of State who's going to use every bit of their executive power to make determinations and to make them fight it out. Because that's ultimately what this comes down to. It is who says the first thing and who operates in this first space. But we have to make our election law less complicated. There are too many spaces for people to fight over the details that are not being adequately enforced. And most importantly, too many spaces for people to make mistakes. I live in the city of Detroit and have represented Detroit, Hamtramck, Highland Park, and the Grosse Pointes. And most of the people who work on election nights are volunteering. They may make a small little bit of money, but they are by and large volunteering, and they've got 1 or 2 days of training. Those are the people that make mistakes in how they process the ballots, and how they manage moving the ballots, and how they store them, and all of those things. And we have got to make sure that the system has more grace for people, and that the processes reinforce your ability to vote. Because not only has they changed what standing looks like, but they've also changed as the post office is saying, hey, postmarked is when it's processed, not when it's sent. And that's going to be deeply problematic for so many folks as we start talking about our military and overseas voters, going to be talking about our absentee ballots, as people look through the details, because the places that they are trying to challenge are Detroiters, are Black voters across the state. Those are the places where we are going to have to spend the most time fixing it, not on election night, not in the weeks right before, but in the years before our elections, to make sure that our process is make sure that people have opportunities, because there are 37 people in Hamtramck whose vote isn't going to be counted. There were tons of people in 2016 and 2020 who were in precincts that didn't balance, and so there couldn't be recounted. Those are the kind of things that we have to fix, and they require legislative changes. And you need a Secretary of State who is going to be able to work with the legislature to pass reforms, and someone who is willing to step up and interpret them in a way that supports people. Something that I have a track record of doing as someone who ran a state agency and fought over how we define the word veteran to include the most inclusive word and the space of saying, hey, anybody who raised their right hand, that's who we're talking about. And so when you go out and turn in your ballot, you should expect that we're going to count it. And as your next Secretary of State, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we count every single person's vote, no matter when you send it, no matter any of those kind of things, because we are going to build a system that is strong and resilient.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, I'm going to read the question again for Susie. So the U.S. Supreme Court just held that anyone who runs in an election has standing to challenge the voting process. And how do you see this change will affect Michigan elections? And what is your plan to minimize the impact of these lawsuits?
Yeah, so just a note on the Supreme Court, right? We've all lived through these painful nomination hearings and confirmations, but we have to acknowledge that we're stuck with these justices for the foreseeable future. And their decision is going to result in more litigation over our election procedures, from mail-in ballots to signature verification rules to ballot deadlines, recount standards before and after elections. So they are changing who has standing, and harm does not need to be shown before those lawsuits can come. And the same expansions that we all voted for here in Michigan and made part of our Constitution are now going to be targets. So in order to minimize this disruptive litigation, we need to have a posture of legal preparedness. And my plan is 5 points. 1, strengthening legal foundations before Election Day. We got to use the tools of the Secretary of State's office, like administrative rulemaking, to reduce ambiguity where it exists now. 2, early legal engagement. That's having a dedicated team at the AG's office or even outside legal counsel, which I have experience in, being ready to respond to lawsuits, filing defensive motions. 3, we have to advance public education and transparency. As Secretary of State, I prioritize educating the public so there's as little confusion as possible around their voting rights and how to cast their ballots. 4, coordination with state and federal partners. The front lines of our electoral process and our county and local clerks, it's vital that we maintain good communication with them amid these ongoing lawsuits to ensure that our processes are continuing to be executed as they should be. And then 5, we got to build a litigation playbook. We got to work with relevant stakeholders, such as the Attorney General and the Bureau of Elections, to ensure that we have the best litigation strategy possible to fight any unconstitutional attacks on our electoral process. And I think someone with my background, having been a prosecutor, having overseen litigation management from the Flint water crisis to other very contested litigation at the governor's office, that I'm the right fit to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Barb.
Thank you. So it is incumbent upon the Secretary of State to have close communications with the Attorney General. It's the Attorney General that will defend the Secretary of State's office. So working in coordination with the Attorney General's office, rules could be adopted, but also we need to make sure that we are mitigating any risk. One of the ways we can mitigate risk is by having an election official as the Secretary of State. Anything a candidate for Secretary of State says today or on the campaign trail can very well show up in pleadings claiming that the elections were rigged. So that's why it's so important that we have an election official as our Secretary of State, because if someone misstates an election process, that can be used in court later against them. I think that's important to note. Now, the Supreme Court has dismantled the Voting Rights Act, and they were going to again. And that's why it's important that Michigan passes a Michigan Voting Rights Act. One was introduced in this past legislative session. We need something that brings election officials to the table so that we can work on a policy that is increasing access, protecting voters, and keeping election officials in mind to actually deliver that access to the ballot box for voters. It's important that we continue to fight all of the things that the Trump administration is doing. Back last January, I contacted many election officials throughout the United States and asked them to sign on to a brief with me in opposition to the SAVE Act. It is important that we not just fight in court, but we fight in the press. And yes, we also fight on Twitter. We have to fight to maintain access to the ballot box and defend our democracy.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you all. Those are really good answers. So here is the third curated question. Although the Secretary of State position is elected, it's primarily administrative and operational in nature. Given that, how might you navigate the operational requirements of this position and the current political and adversarial climate? And for this one, we're going to start with Adam.
Thanks. I ran a state agency, and one of the biggest challenges you have to deal with is civil service. And the best way to do that is by talking to your employees, getting that feedback initially and understanding how they're living, how they're interacting. I went with Jocelyn Benson on one of the first couple of days as she rolled out the new appointment only. You got to get to know the workforce. You got to get to know these spaces and engage all across the state. And that's one of the first things that I'll do. It's something I did a lot while I was on the transportation committee, and having the opportunity to engage with those branch offices. They're going to be really important. I think it's also going to be critically important that we expand the services that we provide and do a better job collaborating with other state agencies. We should no longer should you have to walk into the department or the branch office and hand them your documents and they say, oh, this is the wrong birth certificate. You need X one or you need this other document. We're the state. We should be working with the Department of Health and Human Services so that we can pull up that birth certificate. So we have those kind of relationships so that we can work with you in a way that is real and meaningful. State employees want to be able to say yes and be as helpful as they possibly can. And too often our systems do not allow them to do so. As your next Secretary of State, I'm committed to making sure that we do every single bit of that. And then a big part of that is also working through the budgets you have and working through the legislature and getting everything you can out of them. The legislature controls how many FTEs you are, where you allocate those things, and every single bit of that is a huge learning experience when you first start working with the complicated and cumbersome component of what a state agency looks like, and particularly when you start talking about something as large as Secretary of State with all the different bargaining units. It starts with that space and understanding customer service, understanding the priorities, something that I have a real track record of doing, having run a state agency and working with the legislature on the funding. But even more than that, Michigan have a ton of local clerks and officials that we'll have to coordinate with to ensure training and support and additional funding to make this operation work. And that's what you should expect from me as your next Secretary of State.
Thank you, Adam. Susie's up next.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think, it's not a surprise to everyone that our elections and rights are facing attacks from every angle. And strengthening the integrity of this office is really incredibly important to me in this time. We need a Secretary of State who's laser focused on faithfully executing the duties of that office and not using it to advance a political agenda or use it as a consolation prize or stepping stone to a future office. That also means working behind the scenes to prepare for what may come, and to understand what it means to fight smartly, and not just fight to fight. It's very easy to react to everything that might be happening in our world, but we need to understand that everything we say in the public domain can end up in legal pleadings, and we need a Secretary of State who understands how to fight smartly. This also means we need to have a Secretary of State who's committed to upholding campaign finance laws and holding everybody accountable equally, regardless of party affiliation, because this office serves the people and not politicians. And it also means working with democracy-focused stakeholders, because it's going to take all of us to build partnerships to fight for our democracy. I also believe that building active relationships with clerks across the state is absolutely essential. In my conversations with them, they're telling me they want a Secretary of State that is more focused on being open, one that is willing to talk to them, willing to listen to their needs, because there's not a one-size-fit-all approach. What might be okay in Wayne County and Ingham County or Macomb County may not fit Iosca County or Marquette. And so they want a Secretary of State who's open to listening to them. Strengthening the integrity of the office also means that when it's time for the Secretary of State to fight, that all of the work that they have been doing behind the scenes will be brought to the forefront and be treated with more respect, as it comes from an office known for its integrity and less known for its partisanship. And I know that we have to fight, but we got to do it in the right way. And look, this office is too important to be treated as a consolation prize or a stepping stone for anybody. I've known the Lieutenant Governor for the past 7 years, having worked with him. We really can't risk this office landing in the hands of somebody that's going to use it to elevate their political future. There's just too much on the line. We need somebody who's going to faithfully execute the duties of this office, and we need somebody to fight for Michiganders, and I'm ready to do that.
Thank you. Barb, I'm going to read the question one more time for the second two of you. Though this position is elected, it's primarily administrative and operational in nature. Given that, how much you navigate the operational requirements of the position and the current political and adversarial climate?
So similar to county clerk, Secretary of State is politically elected and administrative in nature. I've been operating in that space for the past 13 years. I am a fierce enforcer of campaign finance at the county level with those individuals and those committees that have to disclose their campaign finance reports to me. I hold everyone to the same standard because in the office, it is nonpartisan. So whether someone is applying for a concealed pistol license at the county clerk's office or a driver's license at the Secretary of State's office, it is a nonpartisan process. What has turned into partisan is the integrity of our elections, because there is only one party that is putting our elections in question, and that is the Republicans. And I will continue to call out mis and disinformation. I'll continue to educate people about Michigan elections, whether it's the teenager in school or the first-time voters at Michigan State University. I'll continue to talk about election administration in Michigan, excite people about election administration in Michigan. I love talking about elections in Michigan. And I think the more people know, the more they will feel comfortable with their election administrators and their Secretary of State. I'm the only candidate in this race that's been endorsed by dozens of county and local clerks around the state of Michigan, Democrats and Republicans. And I think that speaks volumes to how I operate as county clerk, how I operated as a legislator, and how I will operate as your next Secretary of State.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, I think Garlin is our last answer of this question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So these administrative functions are ultimately what is going to engender and build trust in the department, in the position. I talked about this office being like the front door to people's interactions with state government for a lot of people. You know, license registration, all the other processes, the interactions that people are having when they go to places to get their car fixed. And this has to be something that people actually feel good about. You know, too many times when people are interacting with state government, they're doing so at a time when they need something, they need it fast. It gets frustrated when it doesn't happen, or it's not easy, or if it's cumbersome. And it's imperative that we make sure that that is not the experience that people have, because people who lose trust in government processes are ones who lose faith in democracy and ones who check out from democratic processes and ultimately may end up less likely to vote. That's dangerous for our communities and our future. I've started and sold 2 small businesses in my career. I've made systems work for people at the local level, in the private sector, and in the public sector. I've implemented, designed, and executed systems that now are able to help people have better lives in and across the state of Michigan. Because these administrative excellence is ultimately what's going to generate that kind of trust. And that'll be a supreme focus of mine, making sure that we can support the professionals that are in the office today across the state who are doing a great job, and also to recruit talented people to be able to do that work, not just in the election function through poll workers and people who are supporting the local municipal clerks and things like that and the county clerks, but also people who are doing the different administrative functions across the wide bevy of things that are important for the state government. Look no further than the significant challenges on the campaign finance website for an example of how an administrative failure can lead to lack of trust in a system. That means that therefore we're getting all the information about the money that is ravaging through our politics. We have to have that fixed. The last thing I'll say, since I was attacked directly, is that I think what's important to recognize is what is at stake in this election. And what's at stake in this election is building a Secretary of State's office to build on the foundation that's been laid in these last few years, a foundation that has led to, as Michigan's importance as a national state in the electoral process for president and for other federal elections has become so critical, and the microscope has been so strongly focused on us. We have to make sure that we're operating in the highest level of excellence. That's what my career shows, as a person who can demonstrate that and achieve it. And that's what I'm here to talk about and focus on and to deliver as your next Secretary of State.
All right. Thank you very much. I notice in the chat that we have opened it up. Do we have enough time, Decky, to take some questions? Okay.
It's 7:30. You guys they're hustling. So we are good because we were like, oh, we have 4 candidates, but I think we're doing great. I'm really the candidates, the questions, they're answering them thorough and with great depth. So yeah. So we'll give the floor to Adam if he's got some stuff.
I do, and I just want to say thank you to all the candidates for answering the questions so thoroughly, and especially within these time limits. Um, okay, so the first question is, and I'm not sure I can put it on the screen, but I'm going to try. We are a Michigan Democratic and Jewish caucus, and as such, we would like you to share what responsibility you see the Secretary of State, as a statewide office holder, if at all, has in speaking out against hate, such as anti-Semitism and or building bridges to our community. And Rena, did you have a preferred?
No, it's Susie's turn to go first.
Thank you.
1 second.
Susie, I think you might be on
She
mute.
needs to
We
be.
gotta
I
unmute
gotta
her
mute
real
her.
quick, please.
Thanks you. Thank you. You guys, you put a muzzle on me. All right. I'm all right. Wonderful. Well, thank you for the question. Look, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitism in our own backyards and across the world, and I know that rise in this is something that's deeply felt among the Jewish community, and our representatives need to do all they can to protect the Jewish community. As Secretary of State, I will work to ensure that all communities are served effectively by the Secretary of State's office and that everyone's right to vote is protected. But I think that elected officials need to be very mindful about, what they say. And in times of anti-Semitism and a rise in what we've seen, strong leadership is needed so people feel supported and know that the communities have their back. And elected officials need to be doing everything that they can to stand up for the people that they represent. And I want to build relationships with the Jewish stakeholders and their communities to ensure that we are protecting Jewish Michiganders and Americans. And I understand that the Secretary of State's office is not a legislative office, but there's so many different ways that support can be had. It's joining you all at synagogue. It's joining you all at rallies. It's issuing statements in support when terrible things are happening across the world. You need that. People need that. They need to feel supported. They need to feel that we're wrapping our arms around you as a community as this stuff continues to happen. And everybody needs to speak out when they are seeing this happening across our state and across the world. And so I'm looking forward to getting to know you all throughout my campaign and working together to protect your communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Susie. Next up is Barb.
Thank you. So I think it's the responsibility of the Secretary of State and any statewide office holder to push back against hate and to continue to be supportive of all constituencies and unite the party. You will never have to worry about my words or actions being used as a reason for certain constituencies not to feel loved and welcomed in the Michigan Democratic Party. I believe that hate will not win, and I believe that love conquers all. And so words that come out of my mouth, actions that you see from me will be from a place of love and acceptance. And never should anyone feel unwelcome with the Democratic Party or in my house because of something I have said or done.
Thank you, Barb. Garlin, you're up next.
I think our opportunity as Secretary of State is to use three things to make sure that the community feels seen and safe, supported, respected, and protected. That's our words, it's our actions, and that's our presence. You know, I've been really proud and have gained tremendously just of understanding from the relationships being built that I've been able to build in this community, and also by the presence I've shown in events, in gatherings, in learnings and understandings, attending more interfaith activity than any other state official in the state, having more meetings and conversations than any other official in the state with the community. And I'm looking forward to continuing to build on that foundation. It's from that understanding we make each other better. You make each other better by having conversations that need to happen. And I think that's important. And so I look forward to continuing to invest in that. It is important to me that not only are Jewish Michiganders seen and safe in the Democratic Party, that you're seen and safe in Michigan, period. Because you know what? If you are a Jewish person and you're a Republican, I still want you to vote. If you're a Jewish person and you part of some other party or not part of a party, you just want to vote, I want you to be able to do that and to do it in a way that's safe and secure and that you can trust. And that is my job. As the Secretary of State of Michigan, my job is to make sure that everybody knows that their voice matters. They are human beings and deserve to have processes that respond to them. They deserve to have excellent customer service that is responsive to their needs. They expect to have a technology platform from this office that actually works and is accessible. And that is what we must deliver. And I'll deliver that for this Jewish community. I'll deliver that for the communities across Michigan, especially those who have been oppressed. Look, I'm a Black man. I'm a Black man. I understand what it means to be in danger when you wake up. It is important that we make sure that Michiganders who wake up and feel that know that they are safe and seen and supported, respected and protected. And that's something that I'll do and commit to, regardless of any elected office I hold or don't hold, because that is a responsibility that we have to each other as people, as neighbors, as sisters and brothers, as friends, as supporters, as allies.
Thank you, Garlin. Adam?
This is a tough question. It's a tough question for everybody because we shouldn't have to have these. But much like Garland, I am a Black man in America. And in 2020, there were protests as people were dealing with the challenges of what they would say are the stay-at-home orders. I was sitting in my Senate office with my good friend Jeremy Moss, and people were out protesting ostensibly for mask mandates, but they had Confederate flags and swastikas, and they were chanting and the Hitler things. Right? Like, we recognize that the Black community and the Jewish community have always stood together because no one else would stand with us. And so I'm here and very grateful because the Jewish community has been that when we talk about civil rights. The reason that that's so important as the next Secretary of State is because so many of our rights come through the Secretary of State's office. When we start talking about having an ID, being able to participate in elections, getting married, having an ID that has my name, and someone not being willing to share the information that we know are going to be used to persecute us, to demean us, to corner us. That's what you should expect from me as your Secretary of State. You should expect not an ally, not a friend, but somebody who understands that we share in this struggle, that we rise together, that we are fighting this fight together because we always have been. And I'll be clear, I didn't have very many Jewish friends growing up, but over the past decade and 15 years as an adult, I've been able to develop really strong relationships with members of the Jewish community not because they were other, but because they're the kids my daughter plays with at school, because they're our neighbors and my friends, but most importantly, because we are dealing with the very same issues as people seek to persecute us and make people feel dangerous. Right? Like I have never met so many folks or understood the challenges as people over the last 6 months and year have been talking about the legitimate death threats that they have gotten, the concerns that they feel, having to go to events where, the menorah lighting in the D, where people are like, hey, we have to have very serious security for this thing. And in my mind, I want to say, oh, that's overkill. And then just the day before, people are literally being murdered for these spaces, right? Like this is not some soft and warm and fuzzy. This is a responsibility that every elected official in the state is going to have to bear, because we cannot let members of our community who are in the struggle with us feel like they can't participate, that they can't come to our events, that they can't support us, that they can't engage in this party. And too often, there are too many members of this caucus who come to our events and feel like they are going to be shouted down and then are shouted down. You should expect me to stand with you, to raise and elevate your voice, because that's the job.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Here's the next question. Given that there's a high likelihood of the Trump administration trying to interfere in our next election, how will you prepare?
I think we start with Barb.
Well, for the next election, as in this coming, you're probably focused on August and November. Probably November is your biggest concern right now. So thankfully, I will tell you that we have a Spitfire as an attorney general. And I am confident that the attorney general is going to fight Donald Trump and his ilk trying to cancel or do something with this coming election. As an election administrator, we have been looking at the ways that election deniers or those that want to cause trouble in an election, what they have been doing over the past few years. Since 2020, they've been throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. One of the things that would stick is when they would get precinct workers hired by the local clerk that only wanted to slow down the process or report back to someone, not the clerk, of what's going on at the polling location. So one thing that we did at the county level, because I train most of those precinct workers, is if they are acting a fool at the training or they are being disruptive at the training, then they don't get certified to serve as precinct workers, because if they are a disruption at the training, they're going to be an even larger disruption at the polling place. So that's one small thing that we did. Also, we instituted other ways to communicate with our clerks in case there is a breakdown of our phone communication. We have other ways to communicate with our clerks, and we have instituted additional safety measures for clerks, for my staff, for election workers. And I think it's important that we remember the need to fight election mis and disinformation, because that's what engages people. When they hear the election mis and disinformation, they start to believe it, and they start to get angry, and they start to act in anger. And that is what is a serious risk for election administrators and for our elections. And that's why I have continued to educate people about how I know our elections are safe and secure, and pushed back against that election mis and disinformation, because people start to take that information as their own story and they get angry. And our elections are safe, secure, conducted by our neighbors, our family members, and our friends. And we need to continue spreading the information about election administration so the residents can have faith that our elections are in fact safe, secure, and accurate. Thank you, Adam.
Let's hear from Garlin on this question.
Well, I want to echo Barb's comment about the Attorney General. I trust Dana Nessel to go all the way to the mat to protect Michiganders and protect our voting and our electoral process. That's a real important asset that we have. I think folks will be happy to know that the tabletop exercises have already begun about this election here in 2026. Those tabletop exercises are comprehensive. They include not only the Secretary of State, not only local municipal and county clerks, but they also include folks from different parts of the executive branch. They include some legislative leadership. They include a lot of stakeholders in brainstorming all the possibilities. There is such creative aggression from Trump and their allies here in Michigan about how to undermine the elections in Michigan, the voting processes, how to try to compromise, attack, and intimidate people. And so those exercises have begun and they'll continue. And I think, unfortunately, you need to start earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier because we have to be prepared for more. Technology is a really big driver of this. The rate and the quality of the misinformation and disinformation that is going to be not only targeting voters, but frankly, that will be targeting the people who are doing the work of administering our elections is going to come in fast and fierce. I understand this. The team that I led at the University of Michigan School of Information published the university's first paper on deepfake videos back in 2018 when the technology was way worse and it was way more cumbersome. Now those weapons are in the hands of anybody with a cell phone or a keyboard, and it's really, really dangerous. And I'm glad the legislature took some action on some transparency when it came to whether, for example, artificial intelligence was used in generating images for campaign ads and stuff like that. But there's a lot more work that we need to do, and the Secretary of State's office needs to be a part of those conversations as the election administrator here for the state of Michigan. So that preparation work is already underway for this election, and we're going to have to start it almost immediately after this election in preparation for the elections that are going to happen in 2027 and 2028 across Michigan. So we're ready to get to work.
Thank you, Garlin. Adam, you're up next.
We got to stop fighting the last war, right? In moments like these, we spend all our time talking about what the Republicans did the last time. The way that we ensure that the Trump administration and Republicans can't do these terrible things is we get more organized. We get more on the same page, right? Like much to the last question, I'm a Black man in America. My grandmother was born in this country, not a citizen because she's Native American, and they didn't get the right to vote or they didn't get citizenship until she was 2 years old, right? We have lived in a country that for a long time has disenfranchised so many people. As a matter of fact, the overwhelming majority of people in this Zoom could not vote less than 80 years ago, right? And the way that we got our rights, the way that we ensured them is because we said nobody could take them. We organized and we said we're going to show up together. We voted together. We got all of the work necessary to ensure that we were going to collaborate. I think it is the responsibility of the Secretary of State to use the soft power elements much, much better. That means getting our young people engaged, right? So we passed reforms that allow for automatic voter registration when we do ID work. Well, what do we have to do? Make sure that every single person gets an ID. What do we have to do? We have to make sure that we get young people and work with corporate citizens to get them to help participate in some of these elections processes, right? Garlin and I know because we've been at polling locations in the middle of the night, late in Detroit, and it's our grandma who is working there. It is that generation of people. And, when you put on a seal, sometimes it's the right way, sometimes it's a little bit backwards. There are a bunch of precincts that don't balance, right? When we start talking about where the Trump administration is going to fight these fights, it's not everywhere across the state. It's in communities that look like me. It is in communities where Democrats vote. It is communities like Southfield, where they now have a MAGA Republican clerk who has already tried to disenfranchise voters. He's sued to do that after the 2020 election, and we know he's going to do that work, right? Like, we have to show up, and we have got to take this out of the hands of attorneys and clerks and make sure that it is in the hands of people, because we are trained to do the right thing. Right? We have got to make sure that when we check in with our folks and say, hey, have you turned in your absentee ballot, that we are giving them the information to make sure that they drop it in the drop box within enough time, that they hand deliver it, that they take advantage of early voting, right? People with good information and a vested interest in believing that their vote will count are going to participate, because the elections in Michigan have been too close. We want to make sure they can't steal it. We blow it away. It's the same thing you learn in every high school sports. You can't leave it in the referee's hands if you blow it out.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Susie, bring us home with your answer to this last question.
Sure, with pleasure. So for me, this answer encompasses a lot of things. I think tabletop exercises, my emergency management experience. I think these tabletop exercises, not just with clerks, but law enforcement and local emergency response teams need to be coming together to anticipate all sorts of threats, from cybersecurity threats to physical intimidation. And these are going to be in targeted areas where Democrats vote, right? And so we need to make sure that people are ready. And my first act as Secretary of State would be to build a relationship with the next governor. I'm hoping that's going to be Miss Benson or Mr. Swanson. But if it's not, then talking to the mayor and building a relationship with him to make sure that we have that relationship, so the State Emergency Operations Center can be active and ready to go. Or maybe it's John James, God forbid, but maybe it's John James, but not letting partisanship kind of get in the way of getting the job done, right? Rolling up our sleeves. That's definitely a lesson I learned from Gretchen Whitmer, rolling up our sleeves and getting the job done. Additionally, I'm the only person in this room that has litigation experience and that has managed significant and serious litigation. I've worked hand in hand with all sorts of units at the AG's office, and getting ready and preparing and understanding where to attack, how to attack is going to be key. And I'm able to do that. I've done it before and I'm going to do it again. And then also the Secretary of State's office has administrative rulemaking authority. And I really think we need to use it when we're combating AI, right? There's the deep fake. There's going to be all sorts of things that are going to be circulating on Twitter by bots, by candidates, perpetuating lies. We see Patrick Colbeck doing his thing, or Monica Yatuma. There needs to be campaign finance violations associated with that. And as Secretary of State, I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be holding people accountable like I did as a prosecutor. And I think this time calls for someone like me with my track record of toughness and gritness to make sure that we're holding folks accountable. And I would love to be your next Secretary of State and make sure that we're handling business. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to all four of you for sharing your thoughts and answering our questions tonight. I have to say that I am so impressed with all of your political, professional, legal, and legislative experiences. I think the Democratic Party is lucky right now to have such a set of intelligent, forward-thinking, and articulate candidates. So again, thank you. Even though I have been in the election world for 20 plus years, I learned some things tonight, and I appreciate you joining us. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Decky.
Well, before I do a Go Bears sign, I want to thank everyone. In honor of Dr. King, I think he said, our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about things that matter. So I appreciate that you were not silent. There is, as Rena said, this is a large bench, and it was remarkable the depth and the breadth of your responses. I feel so honored, genuinely privileged to be part of this community and party. And we're really grateful that you took out on your Sunday night to be able to share this with us. So we want to be able to make sure for all our attendees and ones that weren't able to come, but also the ones that are here, just to remind people to be a member. Curtis would be very upset if I did not mention this, to be a member of the Michigan Democratic Party. It is free. One of the reasons we're doing this is because in order to really support the most remarkable candidates you just heard, you need to go to the convention in April. And to do that, you need to register within 30 days prior to the convention in April to be a Michigan Democratic Party member. So please do that. We put it in the chat. I think I put it in the chat. Did I? Yes, did I? I think I did. Put in the chat, maybe? I think so. Make sure I put in the chat. Did I put in the chat? No. I don't think it's in the chat.
We'll
Okay.
help you. We'll do it.
We'll get in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna get it. All right, let me get in the chat. So we want to put that in the chat so you can actually come to it, Michigan Dems, and join. Please do that. And we will also be sending up a follow-up email so you can give us some feedback. We also want to share all of the websites of the candidates with all the people that register that weren't able to come. So I'll make sure I get the correct information from all our candidates and to disseminate that information to everybody today or tomorrow probably. And I think we are good. We did it by 8 o'clock. That's amazing. We're so grateful. We know this was a lot to ask on a Sunday night and also questions you weren't sure of. And really, it was an honor and a privilege to hear you. And we're really grateful to have you in our world and our camp. Thank you. Learned a lot. Thank you so much, everybody. And thanks to all the people that attended. And we look forward to seeing you, if not in Lansing before, or in Detroit before. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
Thanks, Rena. Thank you, everybody.